Hey guys, Ambience here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to beat FNaF 2, Nights 1 and 2 on FNaF VR Help Wanted. I think FNaF 2 is mainly remembered for its outrageous difficulty in frequent unwinnable situations, but thankfully the VR remake is a lot more tame than the original. I'd even argue that it's probably the easiest of the three main recreations. This is mainly due to the animatronics being slower and more manageable in general, as well as it being way easier to multitask considering that you can, well, actually multitask. You can wind the music box and check the lights at the same time, which is super helpful and also makes things a lot less nerve-wracking even if you are playing in VR. Anyway, go ahead and load up Night 1 and I'll walk you through it. As you can see, the office is pretty compact. You can check the vent lights using the buttons on your desk, as well as the hall in the same way. There's no actual flashlight in this game, and therefore no flashlight battery, which is another huge advantage over the original. The Freddy mask is on your left, and of course you can flip through the cams on the monitor, light them up with the button near the bottom of the controls, or wind the music box if you're on cam 11. The main threats for this night are Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica, along with the puppet. They'll mostly start to activate around 2 AM, so until then, take some time to get used to your setup. Make sure your VR setup is nice and comfortable, or just practice hitting the buttons quickly on flat mode. While we wait for them to activate, let's talk about how to counter them, their movement intervals, and some other info. All of the main toys will start on the show stage, which is cam 9. You'll want to keep an eye on there for the first few hours until someone leaves. Keep an eye on the party rooms after that, mainly 1 and 2 since that's where the vents are. Toy Chica goes through party room 1, while Toy Bonnie goes through 2. Make sure to keep the camera flash on as well by pressing the light bulb button at the bottom of the camera map. It lets you see into dark areas, and there's surprisingly no real downside to just keeping it on, since this version of the game has no flashlight battery. Anyway, once they get there, they'll eventually enter the vent cameras, cam 5 and 6. You can see them there as long as the light is still on, and once they leave, they'll be next to you. Turn on the vent lights using the buttons on your desk, left for Chica and right for Bonnie, and you'll see them there with a little scare cord. Grab the Freddy mask on your left, and they'll enter the office for a few seconds, make the lights flicker, then leave. Keep in mind that you'll have to physically bring the mask to your face in VR, and that you'll get jumped if you take it off before they leave. Pretty simple stuff, even simpler if you have an idea of how fast they move. Hint hint, time for that boring part of the video where I put on the nerd glasses and use math to talk about movement intervals. In Help Wanted's version of FNaF 2, the movement intervals are fixed for every animatronic and stay the same every night. Higher AI means a higher chance to hit a check. Unlike the FNaF 1 mode, however, every animatronic has an independent movement interval instead of them all operating on the same one, and it's a randomly selected range instead of a fully consistent number. As to not waste time explaining all of them, I'll just show the ranges on screen now and let you decide whether to pause or not. When an animatronic enters their movement range, they keep trying to move every second until it ends. For example, if their movement window is 10 seconds long, they'll attempt to move every second for the 10 seconds between the start and end of the window. Funny enough, if they get unlucky and the movement check fails all 10 times, they'll do the equivalent of flipping the board over when losing and just keep trying to move every second until it works. So if it normally takes them 20 to 30 seconds to move, it could sometimes take 35, or even 40 plus with crazy luck. In any case, once the pass check succeeds, the time needed to reach the next window will restart and checks will start again once the next window is reached. If this just gave you a headache, yeah, don't worry, me too. This is probably the most complicated movement intervals have ever been in an official FNaF game. Anyway, let's move on to something less confusing. By this point, it's probably around 2 AM, so Toy Bonnie and Chica will start walking around. Keep the camera flash on and flip between party room 1 and 2 every now and then. You may also want to turn on the hall light around this time so you can see them cross in front of you and go to the party rooms. They probably won't reach the rooms before the next threat arrives, but hey, better safe than sorry. This next threat has a name, and it's the puppet. Around 3 AM, Phone Guy will mention the music box, and that's your cue to switch over to cam 11 when you can, and wind it up using the button next to the camera flash. The music box in this game is more forgiving and winds down a lot slower, but it also winds up a lot slower, so it's in your best interest to not let it get too low anyway. Just wind it up until it's full, then check both party rooms for a bit, then go wind it up again. Once Bonnie or Chica make it to a party room, be prepared to switch the vent camera on that side instead. When they leave, you should hear metallic banging, signaling that they've entered the vent. For example, if Bonnie's in the right vent, but you haven't seen Chica on the party room camera yet, check cam 1 and 6 in between winding up the music box instead of cam 1 and 2. By consistently checking the cameras, you won't be caught off guard when they make it to the office. When they do reach the office, you should hear another different sound cue, so that'll help if you're currently winding the music box and can't check the cameras. It's kind of hard to explain, but here's the 2 most common variations of it. This will also play when Mangle or the Withered animatronics start walking around later, but for now, it'll just play when someone reaches the vent light. Check it immediately, or both if they were both in the vent cameras, and put on the Freddy mask until they leave. They should only be able to attack once each, since they'll attack around 4 AM at the earliest. Heck, if they failed their checks enough, it's possible for them to not even show up at all. They're usually pretty slow. Speaking of slow, Puppet is quite lenient here. It takes 1 minute and 3 seconds for the music box to wind down from full to empty on this night, which is over an in-game hour. As long as the box is almost fully wound, you can completely ignore it from 5 AM onward if you'd like. Anyway, just keep the box wound up when you can, and keep a close eye on the vent cameras once the toys get close. If it makes you feel safer, you can just focus on the vents once someone gets there, and wind up the box after you ward them off, since it shouldn't take longer than 40 seconds at the most. Just make sure it's close to fully wound when you reach 5 AM, and you'll be good to go for the rest of the night. Oh yeah, Toy Freddy. You might have heard that he usually also moves on this night, and while that is true, I've left him out of this segment because the chance of him actually being able to reach and kill you before the night ends is nigh impossible. At the most, he might walk down the hallway and block your view a little bit, but otherwise don't worry about him and just focus on the others. We'll cover him along with the other Night 2 animatronics in just a minute. Anyway, that's it for Night 1. If you'd like, you can try a different strategy of only focusing on the music box and checking the vent lights frequently, and it'll work just fine, but the strategy I outlined earlier is the safest choice and teaches you more about the game, even if it is a bit more complicated, so I'd say it's worth it. It'll get you used to a lot of the information that I used this segment to talk about, which will definitely help later. On to Night 2, you've got a whole new group of threats on top of the returning ones. Toy Bonnie and Toy Chica are now more aggressive and more likely to move often. Toy Freddy is now an actual threat that can reach your office, and BB and Withered Foxy become big new threats as well. And of course, the music box will wind down quicker and start earlier, so be on your toes from the beginning this time. No AFK, no practice, head over to cam 11 and keep it wound up to full as soon as it starts going down. If you want, check cam 9 with the camera flash on every now and then to see when the toys leave. While you're waiting for the action to start, let's talk about what you can expect for this night. Withered Foxy is nowhere near as intimidating as in the old FNaF 2, but he can still show up surprisingly early and catch you off guard if you're not being careful. From the start, as soon as you switch over to cam 11, you'll want to turn on the hall light and leave it on no matter what. If it switches off while you're messing with the cameras or checking a vent light, turn it on again as soon as you can. This is one of the main strategy points for this mode that's a lot different than the original game. Since there's no flashlight battery, this means you can just leave the hall light on constantly with no real consequence, just like the camera light. This is really good for defending against Foxy, since you'll catch him as soon as he spawns in and get rid of him before his kill timer even gets close to running out. Just leave it on while you do whatever, and turn it back on if it switches off. If you hear a loud sound cue, like when spotting an animatronic with the light in this or FNaF 1, then Foxy's in the hall. Spam the light off and on until it jams, and there you go, he's gone. This is going to be a constant thing throughout the night. Have it on 24/7 when you're not doing something else important, and strobe flash the hell out of him when you hear the sound cue or see him leaning out of the doorway. Foxy's pretty lenient here, so he shouldn't be an issue at all if you keep following this on later nights. Having the light on also gives you the benefit of seeing other animatronics in the hall. Speaking of which, Toy Freddy can now reach your office, and while he was a bit of a pushover in the original, he's actually kinda scary this time. Don't panic when you see him walking down the hall, he's just getting in position. When he lines up under your doorway, don't panic either, he's just getting ready. Once he walks into your office with no sound cue, no warning, and a very short kill timer, then panic. This is another reason why it's very important to keep the hall light on. It'll allow you to see him get into position and make sure you can see him when he starts walking into the office. As soon as he starts moving from being stationary in the hallway, you need to throw on the Freddy mask as quick as you can. While he won't kill you instantly yet, he will later on, and it's best not to play around with him anyway. He's kinda finicky. Once you put on the mask, he'll enter the office and do his blackout sequence immediately, then leave after a few seconds like the others. You'll probably only have to deal with one attack at the most for this night, so don't worry much about him, just keep an eye on him when he gets to the hole and be ready to flick to the mask and you'll be fine. The final new threat for this night is Balloon Boy, who approaches from the left vent. As long as you're checking for Toy Chica and Bonnie like usual, he shouldn't be able to sneak up on you, but if he does get in, he'll steal your batteries and proceed to be an annoying little shit as usual until Foxy eats your head. You probably don't want that to happen, so stay on top of checking the vent cameras and lights. While you can still check the vent cameras when the music box is fully wound like the previous night, you should start relying on the vent lights more consistently. Try and check them every 15 seconds so that you can't be caught off guard even if the animatronics move super quickly. If you're doing that, you actually don't need to check the vent cameras, but you still can if you feel more comfortable with it. The information doesn't hurt as long as you're quick about it. Anyway, once BB finally does show up, you'll see him in the left vent. Throw on the mask and he'll leave instantly, running merrily down the hallway. You only need to have the mask on for a fraction of a second, taking it off during his leaving animation has no consequences, thankfully. In fact, it may be better sometimes to just put on the mask and take it off immediately to check if he's there, rather than using the vent light as long as you know that Chica is away. If you'd like, you can track him through the building by listening for him making sound cues, either talking or laughing. However, these are pretty pointless to track since he'll make a much louder sound cue when he's at your vent, so listen for that and get rid of him as quickly as possible. Alternatively, you can listen for that sound cue I mentioned earlier. Remember, there's multiple variations, and it may be tricky to hear if you're not actively listening for it. Keep an eye out for him early, and he'll probably be the least threatening of anyone. You may have noticed that I'm leaving out one terrifying abomination. Mangle does activate on this night, but just like Toy Freddy on night 1, he thankfully cannot get to you. While she will move around on the cameras toward the end, if he hits all the intervals as quickly as possible, she still wouldn't be able to kill you in time, so just ignore him for now, we'll talk about her next guide. Anyway, now that we've completed the rundown of every new character, let's do an overview of the basic strategy you'll be repeating all throughout the night. This will be pretty similar to the general strategy for later nights as well, the only difference is that you'll have to deal with Mangle, more aggressive animatronics, and eventually the other Withereds. Turn on the hall light at the start of the night, switch to cam 11, and wind up the music box. This is what you'll be spending most of your time doing, is just keeping the music box wound up and the hall light on. BB and Foxy tend to be the most aggressive early on, so be prepared for them. Get ready for the sound signaling that Foxy has entered the hallway. Once you hear it, spam the hall light on and off until it jams. Once it does, don't worry, that's just him leaving the hallway. Once it's no longer jammed, switch it back on and wait for him to appear again, then do the same thing. In the meantime, you'll want to start checking the left vent once BB makes a noise twice, just to be safe for Toy Chica. Checking a vent light will turn off the hall light, so make sure to turn that back on once you're done. You can also start checking the right vent at 2 AM or after you see Bonnie walk down the hall to one of the party rooms. Remember, check the vent lights every 15 seconds or so and turn the hall light back on after. If Foxy shows up, spam the light until he leaves and just check the vents after it's been over 15 seconds. You can also check the vent cameras whenever you have some downtime and the music box is fully wound. Remember to keep the camera flash on. Listen for BB's louder sound cue to know if he's there. If you see anyone in the vent light, throw on the mask as quickly as possible, leave it on if it's a blackout, or take it off instantly if it's BB. Keep that pattern up until 6 and you'll be golden, except for one wrench that can get thrown into the plan: Toy Freddy. This is why you need to keep the whole light on as much as possible, even right after getting rid of Foxy. Toy Freddy isn't super fast, but he is a constant looming threat while in your hall. Keep the light on as much as possible, check the vents quickly and sparingly, and be ready to throw on the mask when he walks under the door frame. Be extra careful not to take off the mask during a blackout, by the way. You actually can do this, and it will result in certain death even if you put it back on quickly. Keep in mind that while Freddy's there, it can be hard to see other things in the hallway, so rely on sound for Foxy completely. Anyway, one attack and you should be good to go, so just keep the pattern up until 6 AM and you should be able to complete the night with ease. Well, that's all for now. Follow this strategy and you should be able to beat the first 2 nights of the second mode. How do you think this mode compares in difficulty to the original FNaF 2? Is it easier or harder so far? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of which, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. If you'd like updates on what I'm doing next, feel free to join the Discord server or follow me on Twitter for all the latest on upcoming videos, streams, and collabs, or a chance to just chill with other FNaF fans, or even to get help on a night that you're struggling with. If you enjoyed this guide and you'd like to see more, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel to show your support. I know it's the classic YouTuber plug, but it really does help me out. Let's try and hit 25k by the end of the year if we can, and I'll try to get as many guides as I can out soon. I'll also be trying to stream every day of December working on these guides live, so if you're not watching this too far in the future, consider stopping by tomorrow to hang out and watch me work. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Bonnie360 for making this video's thumbnail, and to Insta for providing some great information to make this guide as accurate as it can be. Both of them have been helping out with these videos for some time, and they're both linked in the description, so go support them as well. All of the links that I mentioned earlier are down there too, so check them all out. With that being said, thank you guys for watching this guide, I hope it helped you, and I will see you in the next one.